Yep, we're starting now.
Okay.
Hello and welcome everyone. Sorry for the small delay. Lovely Zoom gave us some technical issues, but we're all here. We have a big group of people on the panel. Welcome back to our next Gather talk. If you're listening to the talk, if you're watching it, whatever you do right now, we would appreciate if you shared on our social channels. Please make sure to tag Jay Worldwide and use the hashtag Gather Talks. As I said, we have an amazing group of people today on the panel. I'm Sarah Rapp. I'm the host for today. I'm the Senior Manager of Alumni and Marketing Campaigns at JA Worldwide. For everybody who was in the Gather talk before, you might have seen my face. But we have more incredible guests today on the show. So this is episode 7, and we are talking about modeling. So you might think, we're not posing. It's not any kind of taking pictures of actual models, but we're talking about business modeling. And this is such an important topic because it sounds maybe a bit boring or very complicated, a lot of numbers and graphs. And if you're a creative person like I am, this is not something you would consider in the first place, which can help you advance your career, but actually it does. So we invited experts today. We have Maurice, Kim, Partha, Harshita, and Andre. I'm going to ask them to unmute their mic and introduce themselves in 1 minute or less. Let's start with Maurice.
Hello, I didn't need a mic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from wherever you are. I'm Maurice Glucksmann, along with Kim Warren, who will introduce himself shortly. We established the COVID-19 localization modeling group back in March when the pandemic was exploding and people were trying to understand what was going on. And we had a simple idea, which we thought was important at the time and seems to be ever more important, which is to help young people understand the pandemic, not just at a country level, but locally right in their own neighborhoods, because that's where the outbreaks start. We've succeeded in doing that in dozens of locations around the world, including one particular location in Mumbai that our colleagues Harshita, Margoria, and Andre Nemec are going to talk to you about. It's also a particular interest to Partha Bose, who hails partly from Mumbai as well. So that's me. I'll hand it over to the next guest.
Thanks, Maurice. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kim. Yep.
Right, I guess that's me. I'm Kim Warren. I had a corporate career back in the brewing industry and restaurants and hotels. I then taught at London Business School for 20 years, where I picked up this modeling methodology, and I've used it in many fields, not just in business, but in healthcare, international aid, and various other places. And I've worked with Maurice for many years.
Thanks, Kim. Over to you, Partha.
I'm Partha Bose. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a partner at Oliver Wyman and the Chief Marketing Officer. And I'm also a member of the board of Junior Achievement Worldwide. Just to put everybody's mind at ease, like Sarah, I'm kind of the creative guy, as you can imagine, Chief Marketing Officer. But I've hung around long enough with Maurice and Kim to understand enough about modeling. So you're in good hands on this. If modeling is not your forte, don't worry about it. There's enough here for you to understand. The key thing is to figure out how it is that while you may not be deep into modeling, how it is that you work with models or work with amazing modeling mavens like Maurice and Kim.
Thanks, Partha. And over to you, Harshita.
Hello. So I'm a third year, I'm a graduation student pursuing my political science degree. Nothing much more than it. I am doing this from the University of Mumbai, and simultaneously I'm preparing for administrative services, Indian administrative services, trying to get into the bureaucracy, and also looking forward to get a career into public policy making. Thank you.
Thanks, Harshita. And last but not least, Andre.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Andre Nemec, and I'm a first year economics and finance student at the University of York. And I've been part of this COVID modeling group since pretty much the beginning, back in March, and helped sort of lead the first big project we focused on in Mumbai. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thanks, everyone. So we're jumping right in. I'll hand over to Harshita and Andre, and they will give you more specifics on the actual modeling program Maurice and Kim developed. So they went through it and they had incredible results. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Andre, the stage is yours, and Harshita.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass it over to Harshita, and let's get going. Let's get cracking.
Thank you, Andre. So before we actually start talking about the actual model that we built for LWAD Mumbai, Andre, could you please play the video that we made so everyone can get a brief idea about what we were doing there?
Sure, yeah, let me get that up.
Now we'll go on to see how the model has understood about LWAD and what are the insights from LWAD Mumbai regarding the COVID-19 situation there. Beginning with, this very picture speaks a lot in itself. This shows us that how the slums and non-slums coexist in LWAD Mumbai. The living conditions in these two areas are strikingly different. The standard of living in the non-slum areas is relatively high compared to the slum areas. The slums have very limited access to sanitation and hygiene facilities. Nextly, here in this map of Mumbai, you can see where L Ward is situated. L Ward is such a small area, but surprisingly, it is a house to population of 9 lakh. 9 lakh means 900,000. Here in this enlarged map, we can clearly see that what is the composition of L Ward. The white patches here represent the slum areas. You can clearly see that these areas are evenly distributed all around the L ward. The white patches, that is the slum areas, are very small, but they are home to more than 70% of the population. This clearly indicates to the fact that the density of population in the slum areas of L ward is very, very high. Now, coming to the infections reported in L ward Mumbai. The infections in L ward Mumbai are in some way the average infections reported in Mumbai. Not too high, not too low, making it a very suitable and desirable location to conduct the research to understand how will this virus move in Mumbai district. Now, this is the most important thing for our entire process of building the model for L ward, the zero prevalence survey. The zero prevalence survey measures the antibodies present in a person. Antibodies are developed when a person is exposed to the COVID-19 virus. In the slum areas, the zero prevalence survey found out that 57% of the population had some kind of antibodies present in them, whereas in the non-slum areas, this number was merely 16%. There is striking difference between the slum and non-slum areas with context to the zero prevalence survey. This clearly indicates to a very interesting point that the COVID-19 virus has already swept throughout the slum areas of L Ward, Mumbai. Next, now let us clearly understand why do we say that COVID-19 virus has swept throughout the slum. Let's start with the susceptible people. Susceptible people are those who are not exposed to the virus and are likely to be infected in near future. If you see here, the blue line represents the 57% result that we got from the zero prevalence survey, that was conducted in the month of July. We assume that the entire population of Elwood is the habitant of a slum location. Considering this, in the month of February, 9 lakh people, that is 900,000, were in the category of susceptibles. That means they had the potential to be exposed to the virus and get infected by it. In the month of October, if you see, there is negligible amount of population who is in the category of being susceptible. This means that somewhere in the month of July, August, the cases in Elwood were about 200,000. But now, in the month of October, very few people are infected by the COVID-19 virus in Elwood, Mumbai, because there was hardly anyone who was in the category of being susceptible. Nextly, we will talk about the recovered people in Elwood, Mumbai. Nearly 900,000 people have been so far recovered by the COVID-19 virus in Elwood, Mumbai post-October. That is, post there was negligible amount of population in the susceptible category. Nextly, we will talk about the total deaths that have occurred in Elwood. Nearly 700 people have succumbed to the virus, which is relatively a very lower number. Now, nextly, we will talk about one of the most important things that our localized model goes on to highlight, that is the invisibles. Invisibles are someone who have contacted the virus, are exposed to the virus, but are not detected by the authorities. Invisibles count to a major chunk of all the reported data we have in our model. With the help of invisibles, we get a very clear idea about the susceptibles, infected, recovered, or the ones who are most likely dead due to the virus. Invisibles, in short, fill in the gaps in the data that we have. Now, these two areas, that is the total people resistant and total deaths to date, we are partly sure about these two areas. Firstly, if we see the total people resistant, we have a very reliable zero prevalence survey. With that, we can get a very clear understanding about the number of people who might have once been infected by the virus and now are resistant for the same. The total deaths to date, we are partly sure that the authorities might have reported the deaths to date for COVID-19 virus in a more or less accurate way. Nextly, we will see how our model goes on to match the simulation and actual reported cases. For that, we will start with the total proportion of population who is resistant for the virus. Why do we start with resistant? Just because we are sure with the proportion of population who is resistant for the virus, because we have a very reliable zero prevalence survey conducted by a very reputed authority here in Mumbai. Moving backward in the chain, we will see the deaths that have occurred to date. If you see here, there is a green portion above the actual reported death. What does that green portion indicate? It indicates that we are partly sure about the deaths till date reported by the authorities. We think that there might be someone or there might be few deaths that have accounted due to the virus but are missed by the authorities. Nextly, we see the total new cases and the confirmed cases to date. Here, very important thing to notice, the actual reported data, which is represented by the red, indicates that merely 60,000 people have infected the COVID-19 virus in Elwood. But if you have a look at the resistant data that you have on the right, you can see about 500,000 people have infected the COVID-19 virus and now are resistant by it. This clearly indicates that the authorities have merely reported 1% of the total cases in L Ward, Mumbai. Now we go on to see one of the most important things, and that is if L Ward was a total non-slum habitation area. What then? Look at your right. The graph represents total people resistance. The orange line here represents 16% zero prevalence that we have already seen earlier that in the non-slum areas, 16% of the population has some kind of antibodies in them. The zero prevalence survey that we have indicates that post the month of November, October, there will be a surge in population who will be resistant for the COVID-19 virus in the non-slum areas of Mumbai. Now, let's talk about the deaths to date in the non-slum areas. The deaths to date post November have a high potential to rise 3% as compared to that it was in the month of October. Why is this so? This is because the cases will rise rapidly post November in non-slum areas of L Ward, Mumbai. To understand this better, let us have a look at the susceptibles in non-slum areas of L Ward, Mumbai. To have a look here, the orange line representing 16% zero prevalence, you can clearly see that post October, there is a steep decline in the susceptible population. A very sharp decline directly indicates to the fact that there is an increase in cases. There can be 9 times to 7 times increase in cases as compared to in the month of April in the non-slum areas of L Ward, Mumbai. 9 and 7% is a very huge number. Now, as we have seen how the things are moving on in L Ward, slums and non-slums, let us quickly browse through the highlights and insights. Firstly, there can be minimal chance, or I would say no chance of second wave in the slum areas of L Ward just because there are no susceptible people left. If there are limited susceptible people, this directly means that there will be limited chance of a second wave. Whereas in the non-slum areas, huge chunk of population is in the category of being susceptible. This highly risks them to be exposed by the virus and get infected in near future. Nextly, one of the most important thing is there is a need for urgent action during this festive season. The festival of Diwali has begun in Mumbai, and as we saw earlier, there is a risk of 7 times explosion of infections compared to April in the non-slum areas. So, if we have to tackle the virus and limit this 7 times explosion, the authorities should increase testing, tracing, and isolation facilities in the non-slum areas of L Ward. Further, hygiene has also something which people should adhere to. It is very important that people follow the sanitation protocols as provided and mentioned by the authorities. Nextly, one of the most important thing is localization. Why is localization important? Why does our model talk about it? It is because looking at averages is very misleading. Looking at averages, we can neglect and miss out on the severity of the total cases and how the infection will move on in a particular area. Now, we will move on to see some of the further issues. These further issues are related to the pre-existing resistance and reinfection risk. Pre-existing resistance is something, if higher the pre-existing resistance in the non-slum areas, lower the chances of infections will be seen. And in case of reinfection, it is one of the most experimented thing all around the world. And our model also goes on to experiment on reinfections. And we have come to this conclusion that somewhere in the month of February 2021, the slum areas can be reinfected And somewhere in September 2021, the non-slum areas of Elwood can be under the chance of facing a reinfection risk. Now, to read about these two and to understand how did we conduct our experimentation and how are we so sure about our results, please read our article whose link will be provided to you. Now, nextly, how do we intend to influence the policies and what do we think is to be done in Elwood, Mumbai to limit the further spread of COVID-19 virus? Firstly, the insights of slums should be applied to the non-slum areas. Nextly, the tools of modeling should be very appropriately used to understand what will be the need for the infected people in near future. To what extent does the medical infrastructure needs to gear up to fulfill the needs of the upcoming infected population? Nextly, the authorities should refrain from generalizations. Treat every individual pockets in the community as a individual area. Avoid generalizations. Make the use of localized models to understand how the infection moves in a particular area and then strategize for one localized area. Nextly, one of the most important thing of this entire process is that the findings of Elwood Mumbai can be applied to other cities of India like Delhi and Kolkata, which have very similar societal compositions. I hope I have very clearly expressed how dangerous or how risky the non-slum areas of Elwood are at the present times. And if they don't follow health protocols and if the authorities are not well geared up, there would be a very dangerous challenge standing before somewhere from the month of November 2020.
Thank you so much, Harshita, for sharing this great insight. And I think it's impressive. You know, you did this by side and you found out all these amazing things. And now you can help actually for the Valley, which is starting today, what you just said, to really make sure that the population is a bit safer, right? I mean, nobody will be safe during this time at all, but thank you so much for you and Andre for doing this. And since our topic today is talking about modeling, what you did and how it can help advance your career, maybe Andre, can you share some insights from your perspective? How did it change your way of thinking? How did it affect maybe your future steps on what you want to do in your life? And you can switch off the slideshow so we can see your full face.
Yeah, so during this modeling experience, I learned a lot of developed a lot of sort of hard and soft skills that have, impacted the way I go about my life today. So just to touch on a few, when we would, doing this presentation and, doing a lot of analysis, I had to be very comfortable with, looking at large data sets and a lot of numbers and being able to manipulate them in, Excel sheets and whatnot. And I think doing that a lot over the projects that I've been working on really developed those skills of mine. And recently, actually last week, I participated in an asset management simulation run by sort of a training company at the University of York that we got in. And basically, long story short, we had to, sort of in a simulation account, invest in different stocks and equity and try and return the highest number of dollars possible. And I placed first in that simulation. And I think being part of this project in part of the modeling group, having previous exposure to time-based models and being comfortable working under pressure with large numbers really did help me be able to place first in that simulation. Not only hard skills like that, but soft skills like presentation skills and confidence in my own ability really was developed during this modeling project. For example, now, being able just to think on my feet and be dynamic when I'm talking and pull from different experiences and string them together like I'm doing now is something that I wouldn't have been able to do without this modeling project. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Andre. And I think this is what I meant in the beginning, that it might seem like all these numbers and graphs and trying to figure out what the results are, but there's so much more behind it. And before we have Maurice and Kim talking us through how they came up with the modeling idea and how you guys in the call can also participate in one of this. We also have Partha in the call who, as you mentioned in the beginning, I feel like Partha, we're kind of the creative people here in the call, and we would not necessarily go into the spreadsheets with all the numbers. However, as you said, you came across a lot of modeling throughout your career. So we would really love to hear your perspective on how it helped you in your career and what kind of advice you can give to the alumni who are listening and the ones who also watch the replay on why this is also a very important aspect of a career.
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Andre and Harshita, for a wonderful presentation. I think the main thing that one has to bear in mind is that models are here to stay, and we're living in a world where, as you know, machine learning and artificial intelligence are kind of taking over the world. So there's actually going to be even more models of a different nature. So we just have to accept it, that modeling is here to stay. And no matter who we are, it's not necessary that every one of us has to be a modeler, but we have to know how to interact with a model. We have to know how to collaborate with great modelers. And the main thing is we have to be comfortable so that we can question some of the assumptions. So this week, as you all know, we're talking about COVID-19, and what we just saw on the L ward versus the rest of Mumbai was really a demonstration of how the law of averages approach does not really work. Because if you took Mumbai as a city, there's a certain, Mumbai was actually very badly hit, just like New York City was very badly hit, or Hong Kong, or cities around the world were very badly hit. But if you go look behind the numbers, you find that there are certain areas that have been even worse hit than the rest of the city. And it's kind of, it's a way modeling will allow you to kind of, decipher, to distinguish between those that are really very poorly hit and those that might not be as badly hit. And so you can make better assumptions, you can develop better strategies to kind of dealing with one versus the other. We all know this great news that happened this week. We now have a vaccine, which has a 90% efficacy. There's probably going to be another one that'll come out next week. But these are coming out of, BioNTech, Pfizer's based in Mainz, Germany, New York City in the United States. The next one that's expected to come out is Moderna, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But getting the vaccine or developing the vaccine is one thing. Getting it in the hands of billions of people, not millions, but billions of people, is a completely different thing, especially when the storage and transportation needs of these vaccines are quite staggering. I mean, they can only be carried at minus 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates into minus 80 degrees Celsius. So that's, we're talking about cryogenic levels. So when you think about that challenge, and by the way, everyone around the world will have to get vaccinated. Otherwise, COVID-19 in some shape or the other will stick around and it'll become COVID-20, COVID-21, etc. So the only way we're going to get this done is vaccinating everyone around the world. Well, imagine Burkina Faso, thousands of miles away from Mainz, Germany, or Cambridge, Massachusetts. There was a great Associated Press article that appeared yesterday about Burkina Faso not even having pharmacies or drugstores who have basic refrigeration. They don't even have refrigerators that we take for granted in most of the societies that we live in. So imagine the challenge of being able to not only transport that vaccine to Burkina Faso and to the pharmacies, and then there's the additional challenge of closing that last mile to the individuals and administering that vaccine all the time, kind of keeping it under 110 degrees, minus 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you start looking at, so what needs to happen, what assumptions can we make about how we're going to transport this, what needs to happen in each of these countries. There's also, lack of education. There are anti-vaxxers around the world who do not want vaccines. You begin to start getting your arms around these qualitative issues. So quantitative is, we now have the vaccine developed. We can talk about, the millions of doses or billions of doses of vaccines that we will need. Those are all quantitative measures, right? But for us to really understand how effective we're going to be in terms of ameliorating or decreasing this quagmire that we are dealing with, we really have to think about how are we going to administer it. That's when a lot of qualitative issues come in. And this is where modeling can help you make assumptions about, what percentage of anti-vaxxers through education, et cetera, through coaching, through pressure from friends and families might actually start taking the vaccine. What can we assume about refrigeration units at the last mile where we can store these vials of vaccine and kind of administer them? So the decisions about that and our ability to predict where the virus will be 6 months out, a year out after we have started vaccinating can only be figured out through proper modeling. So, don't think of modeling as this very dull kind of, you sit in a room and keep doing it. It's actually a very collaborative process. Every one of you who's played a gaming software or done a flight simulator and all of that, you understand that those are all based on modeling. And that's what management now needs. They don't just want, when I go in and advise someone, a senior executive, I can tell them all my recommendations, but unless I have a model to take them through, they're not going to be persuaded. And again, I want to stress this, not all of you need to be modelers, but you need to be comfortable enough that you can look at a model and question some of the assumptions. I was looking at a model recently where one of my colleagues who has a PhD in astrophysics from Princeton was showing me something. And, I was looking at it and I said, wait a minute, that number you have there doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, I think it does. It's been tested by several people, verified. I don't think that does make sense. And we both looked at it and it did not make sense. But that ability to kind of zero in and question that number only comes if you're comfortable in your own skin and you're comfortable with modeling techniques. So just try it out. I mean, all of you probably do some Excel. That's a model. That's a very basic level of modeling, but that's a model. So get comfortable with it. And I think in the world we live in, it's just going to become more and more important. So I don't know if that answers the question you had, but
it did.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Partha. And I think this also made clear for the people who are not interested in science and everything, why it's so important and that we actually do it on a daily basis in small portions, right? So, but we also obviously want to hear, so we gave Harshita a quick break from her, presentation. Harshita, we also would love to hear what your impressions were after you went through the program. What skills did you learn and how does it help you now going forward with your studies? I think you're still on mute, Harshita, because you're already talking.
Oh, and no, I wasn't on mute. There was some internet connectivity. Thank you. So, yeah, if I heard your question right, you were asking me about what I have learned in the entire process of modeling.
Yes, correct. Oh. If your internet connection is bad, you can switch off your video so we can at least hear you. Can you hear me okay now? Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I just turned off my video because I think there's some internet. Yeah. So if I heard your question right, you were asking me about how this entire modeling process has helped me learn new skills.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I think there are very important points that I would mention, and it would be I learned how to effectively use the available data, because in the process there were a lot of times when we did not find the data that we wanted. So now necessarily learned how to efficiently use the minimal number of data that you have. And one of the most important thing that I have learned again is the benefit of discussions. So all the time during the process, we were discussing for hours and hours. And that is the thing that discussions are really the laboratories for new ideas and solutions. Continuously modifying your work, one of the most important skills that I have learned in this entire process that I will go on to use all over my life. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harshita. And, I still find it impressive that you guys did it on a voluntary base beside everything what's happening in life and a global pandemic. You used it to actually do something good and help the world. And now we're going to hear from the two gentlemen who are actually behind this whole modeling piece. I'm not sure who wants to go first. Maurice, Kim, please feel free to explain everyone how you came to this modeling. And I know that this was not the first model you did, but you're in the modeling business since a very long time.
Do you want to go first, Kim?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sarah. Well, I've been working with these models in a business environment for very many years. And if you're scared of models, the good news is you're not alone. All of those executives I talk to in the real world, they're scared of them as well. So what I've really been focusing on for the last over 10 years now, it is translating them into things that everybody can understand and things that they're already familiar with. So I guess most people on this call will have a bank account, right? Or a credit card, or maybe both. When you get your credit card statement at the end of the month, or the bank account statement at the end of the month, you're looking at the results of a model. Whatever you've got in your bank account today is whatever you had 1 month ago, plus whatever you paid in minus whatever you paid out. If you're looking at your credit card statement, how much you owe now is what you owed 1 month ago, plus what you spent, minus what you paid off, plus that nasty interest charge that the credit card company charges on that. We all know that, right? That's what's going on in our life all the time. Well, it might be a bit of a shock to you, but actually that's pretty much the basis of how we build these infection models. The number of people infected today is the number of people infected 1 month ago, plus the number of people who got infected during the last month, minus the number of people who recovered. The slightly unfortunate thing about an infection is that the interest rate is not 2 or 3% per month. It's 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 or 200% per month. That's why those experts came out and said, watch out, folks, we could be looking at millions of people dead here. And we are headed there. Those are the kinds of numbers. And that's why, because that credit card is growing at that kind of rate. Anyone not understand that? No, that's just the way we understand a very basic feature of our normal everyday lives. So all we've had to do in basic terms in building this model of COVID-19 is to put some of those kind of credit card type models together for the number of people who haven't had it, the number of people who have had it and recovered, and the number of people who have got sick and recovered but might get sick again if their resistance wears off. That's essentially all that's going on here. And it's not, if you can understand the basics of how to build a spreadsheet with columns that kind of add up and multiply and take away from each other, you have got the basic skills you need to build one of these models. And if we've got time at the end, we'll point you to a free course that will show you how to do that. In less than a day, you can build a little model of how policing policy might work to reduce the number of crimes in a city of a particular type. So there we go. That's what I've been trying to do.
Maurice, you want to add your story about modeling in general to it? Because I know you two have been working together since a very long time, right?
That's right. And Partha, I have to credit as being one of my most influential mentors, because being an engineer originally, I studied naval architecture. I needed somebody to teach me how to write, and he stepped in and did that with me. And I've passed on the tradition to the students. Both Andre and Harshita, we've worked together extensively, developing their articles. Both Andre and Harshita are now published authors with their articles about Mumbai City District versus Dharavi and L Ward on Medium. And anybody who wants to see what they've written, we have those, and we'll provide the links. But this course and this talk today is about, how does modeling translate to helping you in your career? And I think if you think about a career as these days, the gig economy, people changing jobs all the time, moving from one situation to another, having a way of thinking that helps you join all those things up and shift one day from automotive sales to insurance to banking to modeling pandemics to dealing with the logistics of distributing vaccines. All of these things, all of these subjects, and all of these questions that you have when you're trying to do these, answer them, you can all get informed by models, and this particular type of modeling is very useful. And I think you can see by the comments that Andre and Harshita made, they feel like they have got new skills that will directly impact their success as they progress in their careers. Harshita is about to graduate and go into hopefully a career in the civil service. Andre is just starting out in economics and finance, and maybe would like to be in asset management someday. He's already come first in a competition, which he never thought he would do even just a couple of months ago. So there's real examples, and we've seen this happen over and over again. Me personally, I was a management consultant for quite some time, which is how Partha and I first got to know each other, and Kim and I met at that stage, and we've all continued developing each other in different ways, I think. You can see that we've moved on and we're mentoring young people as well, and we'd like to continue that. My own career has been, in addition to management consulting, I've applied these modeling techniques as an equity analyst, valuing companies, advising clients which companies to buy and sell, and making investments and divestments in a very significant scale and at small scale as well. And even I'm an advisor to companies that are using predictive modeling to trade shares, and also to a small company in Crete that makes vaccines for fish farms. So it's very widely applicable. You can really use it quite effectively in almost any area. And and I think as Kim said earlier, we have some free resources and also some other courses that you can take that we'll share with you. And in particular, we have a competition going on right now for anybody in the UK. We have a lockdown here in England, not in Wales, not in Scotland, not in Northern Ireland, because they have their own schedules. But anybody in the UK can enter a competition and for a cash prize. Actually, we're offering a cash prize for the best analysis about how long and how deep should the lockdown be in a local area. And the case study that we will be showing you as an example is the one that Harshita and Andre have worked on. So you can see how the lockdown impacts each local area and what it needs to achieve to suppress the outbreak of COVID-19 in each local area. And the reason we're doing that is each local area is very different. And young people like Andre and Harshita, are right at the front line of part of the solution, because they are the least affected, because they don't suffer as often as older folks from severe symptoms. And at the same time, if because of that they are less vigilant, they become dangerous to others, and we feel it's very important for them to understand. So that's why we're running this competition, which was announced last weekend. So we'll provide details on that as well. Hope that answers the question. And thank you all for all the efforts, and for Sarah, thank you for providing this platform for us to encourage people to try it out.
I mean, thank you so much, everyone, for answering. I feel like the beauty of a big panel is that we get to know so many people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, but also, everyone has just a very tiny short amount of time. But we have 8 minutes left, so I would love to open up for questions from the audience. If you have any questions, type them into the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself, because we're not that of a big group today, so we can have you talk in the microphone. And what I just wanted to say as well is thank you to all of you on the panel. I think every single one of you did a fantastic job, not obviously on the panel for sure, but in the past month, because I know the pandemic is such a burden for all of us, and mental health issues are so big everywhere across the world. And it takes people like you to step up and really use the situation and really help, everybody across the world to really make it better. And I think, you guys are incredible, and especially also Harshita and Andre, thank you for pushing through it. Thank you for doing it, and also presenting it today in our talk. So let's see if we have some questions. If we don't have any questions from the audience, is there any question from you, Andre, Harshita, Kim, Maurice, or Partha for someone else in the panel? And I mean, if not, we can take 7 minutes back in our time. I think everyone is happy to also get, a quick break in between calls. At least I am.
I have a question. I have a question for Harshita.
Sure.
We were talking, about what happened and how she got involved, and whether she was going to do it. And she had some interesting remarks, which were, well, to me, they were entertaining. And kind of fun, and I was wondering if she would share them with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so initially in the initial phase when we had to start building this model, I was very unsure about will I be able to be a part of this model and dedicate so much of my time for this. Because I was very concerned about my studies, my academic schedule, my exams. My university was scheduled to begin from the next month. We started in the month of July, and my university was going to start from August. So I was very, very concerned that engaging so much of time in this modeling, is it worth? But now after this entire process, after we have completed building the model, wrote a research article, made the video, I think that this being part of this entire modeling process was one of the most good decisions that I took. And I had very fruitfully used my pandemic by being part of this, wherein I understood the infection of the virus very much accurately than others did. So yeah, I would say just thank you for getting me into this entire process. I feel very happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
One other question, Harshita. If you have to speak for the other fellows that were involved, what do you think they would say?
I think we all are. Firstly, we are very overjoyed to be part of this, because we learned a lot of things. I very well remember Viraj mentioning one of the fellow who worked with us. He mentioned that how this entire process of modeling can be taken to a very greater level. He once mentioned about how this modeling can be used to tackle climate change. And I think that that is one of the most important issues before us. So if we have such attitudes of taking forward modeling process to such important and grave issues, I think that will certainly help us. And definitely this entire process will help us in our universities and our careers, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And what Maurice and Kim said, we will obviously link the free course on Gather. We will send out an email to everyone who participated. We will make sure that also our UK group, I will send a special email to them, have the chance to, take the competition you just mentioned. The recording will also be available on Gather. And with that, happy soon weekend, right? Depending where you are in the world. Thanks for tuning in. And next Gather talk is in December, and you will see everything on all social media channels. And thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.